Um, Sorry that I sound so nasally, but I'm sick right now, so ignore that. So we're gonna do, I have 3 drafts of this story in, and I'm gonna compare them meeting Advar in each of them. Editing Molly, ignore that the camera quality is so horrific. I had to film that on my computer, my Chromebook, because it's the only thing that my microphone will work for, because the adapters are messed up. So I can't plug it into my iPad. Or my camera. I guess I could plug it into my camera. Why did I not do that? Lillian lagged behind, leaving deep imprints in the snow as she trudged forward. Her feet stung, and breathing in the crisp winter air caused her nose a great deal of discomfort, especially now with no trees to block the wind. The knee-high snow glittered in the moonlight, and the dead pines that lined the edge of the clearing creaked and groaned in the wind. Hattie's irrepressible curiosity got the best of her, and she waded slowly through the snow, urging Lillian to follow, but she did not, for a sense of foreboding had overcome her. I don't think we should turn around, she forewarned, but Hattie continued. She was soon right beside the mound. Lillian, don't, she stammered. Her eyes, wide and fearful, stared through Lillian as though she was not there. Don't, I can't, come off it, Hattie, scoffed Lillian as she pushed Hattie's hands away. She proceeded through the snow and came to a halt when she perceived what lay before her. Oh, God, she cried, backing away slowly. Her eyes began to brim with tears, though she could not take them off the scene. Hattie was now pulling her away by the wrist, fervently insisting that they leave, but Lillian remained glued to the spot as her mind grew heavy with worry and uncertainty. Buried in the snow lay a lifeless man, his blistered skin a repulsive shade of blue. His eyes, glossed over and lifeless, pointed toward the sky as his mouth hung unnaturally agape. The entirety of his corpse was buried under a freshly fallen blanket of snow, save his face and the tips of his boots. A gaping hole sat perfectly between his eyes, though no arrow was in sight. It perhaps had been buried beside him beneath the snow. Who could do such a thing? We need to go. Let us be out of this place before night falls. At once the girls set off at a sprint, their hair blinding them as it blew wildly in the tempestuous wind. Sharp thorns tore at their clothing as they forced their way through the thicket whence they had come. Just as they had made it into the surrounding forest, a rustling became audible from across the clearing. The girls dropped to the ground and hid themselves behind the foliage, listening intently despite the gale which grew only louder around them, filling their ears with an unfaltering whistle. Suddenly, the pounding of hooves filled the air. Great horses galloped at full tilt through the clearing, kicking up snow as they went. The armor in which each rider was clad bore no semblance to the javelin armor, nor did it resemble anything the girls' unschooled eyes had yet beheld. A single man led the stampede, his chestnut hair fluttering violently behind him as he leaned forward in the saddle, urging his horse with his heels as he rode. As quickly as the group had appeared, they were gone. The girls exchanged disconcerted looks before scrambling to their feet and wiping the snow from their legs. No sooner had they risen than Hattie dove back to the ground, pulling Lillian with her. She landed with a soft thud but stayed where she was, her ears stinging as she lay with it pressed against the snow. She shuddered as she drew shallow, trembling breaths. Muffled footsteps grew slowly louder as she held her breath in suspense. She deducted as she lay in the snow that there must have been at least 4 people. The soft thudding of hooves grew slowly more distant until disappearing altogether. Hattie did her best to peer over the bushes imperceptibly and swore under her breath as she ducked, for the leg of a great beast had emerged from the thicket, and out stepped a spider. Not the unsightly kind that the girls had expected. This one was a deep shade of brown and the size of a stallion, and a saddle lay upon its back. Mounted upon the spider was an elf with a youthful face. Long, fair hair cascaded down his back. "Stay down," she whispered, her voice slightly trembling. The elf rode toward the body and dismounted slowly, his feet leaving no imprints in the snow as he approached the buried man. Even as he laid eyes upon the repulsive sight, his expression remained fixed. He muttered something to himself as he brushed the snow from the man's chest plate and observed it briefly. His slender hands removed a satchel from the soldier's belt, and in it he discovered a small slip of yellowed parchment. "Ah, confound it," he muttered to himself as he began to read. "Trevelyan." Hattie jumped as the elf's eyes darted toward them, calculating and cold. The girls rose abruptly as they heard a drawstring pull. "Wait! Please, sir, don't!" exclaimed Lillian frantically, her hands above her head. Don't shoot." His gaze softened as he lowered his bow. "You have no business here," he growled, slowly approaching the bushes. "Go home, both of you." "Sir, I don't want to hear another word. Turn around." Hattie stepped forward with faux confidence. "That man met his fate at your hands," she stated brusquely, speaking from her chest. "Those men," he started after a while, nodding toward the direction of the fleeing soldiers. "They are the ones you should fear. It was their arrow that pierced the skull of that man, not mine." "Why should I believe you?" Hattie scoffed derisively. "Hattie, come on," urged Lillian, tugging on Hattie's sleeve, but her feet remained firmly planted in the snow. "Let's go." "I don't give a D-word whether you believe me or not. You don't want to know what those soldiers would do to you if they found you. Go home." "Where are they headed?" "I'm trailing them. Hurry and be off now." "At least tell us your name." The elf rolled his hazel eyes as he returned swiftly to his spider. "Advaar," he said as he threw his leg over the saddle. "That is my name." Before setting off at a gallop, he threw the hood of his cloak over his head and shot the girls a grave look. "We need to leave," cried Lillian as she stumbled backward. "We need to tell someone." "That elf is meddling in something." "Stop it! That does not matter, Hattie. His business is not ours." "We must tell someone." "Agreed," huffed Lillian as they turned and plunged once again into the thicket. "This is the second draft. We could visit the goblin caves," she recommended with a mischievous smirk. "No, absolutely not," declared Lillian as she crossed her arms. "I'm starting to think you have a death wish." "Are you afraid?" Hattie mocked smugly, crossing her arms. "No, I would just like to return before my mother wakes up," Lillian fibbed. "We won't be there long. I just want to see it in person, and then we can leave." "We already know it exists. Isn't that enough?" "It won't be that long. We'll keep it a distance. I just want to see." "Fine," Lillian agreed, agitatedly. "Let's go." For about an hour they continued forcing their way through the forest until they happened upon a small clearing where they decided to rest. They stayed and conversed for a long while, shielding their heads as it unexpectedly began to rain. "My mother's definitely awake by now," Lillian sighed, shifting her leg to an equally as uncomfortable position as they sat together on a large boulder. Lillian and Hattie instantaneously ceased their chatting upon hearing a branch snap behind them. Aggressive, gravelly breaths boomed over the sound of the rain like claps of thunder, filling their hearts with dread at the realization that they were defenseless. The vile creature slowly crawled from the thicket, crouched on all fours. The beast's keen claws left deep imprints in the mud as it emerged into the light. Its gleaming pale eyes and snake-like skin told the girls that they were facing a goblin. As quick as a wink, it pounced, baring its long fangs. It swiftly reared, brandishing a shoddy wooden spear twice its size, and charged at them clumsily. Hattie swiftly acted, gripping Lillian by the wrist and sprinting toward the other end of the clearing. They heard a whoosh of air by their heads. The goblin had thrown its spear at them. It struck Hattie in the arm, completely piercing through. She immediately fell to the ground and writhed in pain. As Lillian sat by her side, glancing to and fro in a panic, the goblin dropped to the ground with a thud, a long, slender arrow between its eyes. Lillian glanced in the direction from which the arrow had been shot, only to see the leg of a great spider step into the light. She kneeled over Hattie, preparing to receive a deadly bite from the beast. But none came. Curious as to how she had survived, she cautiously opened her eyes and noticed that an elf sat atop the beast. A tall, pale elf with fair hair and hazel eyes. His cloak, under which was a suit of very handsome armor, flowed gracefully behind him. "Please, I need help," Lillian sobbed over Hattie and gasped at the deathly pallor of her face. The elf dismounted his spider and patted its head reassuringly, then kneeled by Hattie and inspected her wound. "Ready?" he asked, placing his hand on the end of the spear. 1, 2, 3. Hattie wailed with pain as the spear splintered on its way out. "Wait, she will bleed out," Lillian warned. "No, she will not." The elf rose and grabbed a small vial from the saddlebags which hung from the spider, then returned and poured it with care over Hattie's wound. The bleeding ceased almost instantaneously as the color slowly returned to her face. "Try moving your arm." Hattie struggled, but to no avail. Her arm did not move. The elf rose. "Where do you live? You must return home immediately." "Norwatch, sir," Lillian responded. "Do you know where that is?" "Yes, I'm stationed there. I'll bring you both home." Hattie mumbled weakly as her body trembled. "I don't trust you to stay true to your word. My mother says to never trust your people." His stare hardened. "What is wrong with you?" Lillian gasped, looking at the stranger apologetically. "I'm so sorry, sir. It is her upbringing. She knows not what she says." She's in pain, I understand. He picked Hattie up with little effort and laid her gently across the spider's back. Mount her and support your friend. Lillian struggled onto the saddle behind Hattie and held her upright as they rode home. Okay, here is the first ever draft from like 2019. I don't know if I was in 5th grade or 6th grade. It was one of them. She's from Arachnidor, correct? The Elven City? Why is it called that anyway? Said Hattie. Well, giant spiders roam around the city, and the guards have been able to tame them. They ride them instead of horses. They're the only elves to ride spiders, and that's what makes them unique. I've heard so many tales of that place. I wonder why my mom left, but it's quite interesting, really. Wow, it'd be nice to have a giant spider. Wish I could have one, started Hattie, pausing when they heard a sudden rustling in the bushes behind them. A small, gleaming pair of eyes peered through the bushes. A thunderous growl rose from the shadows. Nothing that the girls had seen before seemed as peculiar as these eyes. It couldn't be a goblin. It was nighttime. What? Perhaps it was another lesser-known creature. Another growl was heard. A greenish-brown hand crept from the bushes, its long dagger-like claws leaving imprints in the ground. Quick as a wink, a creature shot out of the bushes. It charged at the girls, making inhuman screeches. It ran clumsily on 2 legs, gripping a spear in its hands. It lifted it behind its head and prepared to throw it at the girls. Right before the spear could leave the goblin's hands, a long arrow shot from the other side of the clearing, striking it in the chest. A stream of dark blue blood spewed from the wound. They heard loud thumps from the direction in which the arrow had shot from. A great spider-like leg stepped into the light, and 3 sets of crimson-red eyes became visible, which gave off a sense of calmness and dominance, but no anger or ill intention. A man in a long flowing cloak and armor sat on the cephalothorax of the spider, holding a large wooden hunting bow. Reins were attached to the pedipalps. How did I know these words? The guard yanked on the reins lightly, and the spider stopped, half still hidden in the thick trees. He was an elf. Pointy ears poked through his long, chalky blonde hair. Ignore that. He had 2 small braids on either side of his head, which looped to the back and were intertwined, forming another small braid which hung from there. What are you 2 girls doing here? He asked, standing up. He towered over the girls, must have been at least 6 feet tall. We're lost, lied Hattie. Lillian's eyes widened. What do you mean we're lost? Why are you lying? We don't even know who he is. Just play along. The elf quickly sniffed out the lie and eyed them suspiciously, wondering whether they were to be trusted or not. He took a step back and began to scowl as the spider backed up as if it were afraid and made horrible screeching sounds. He extended his arm towards the girls and grabbed their wrists, then pulled each of them onto the spider. He mounted it himself. Hop on, he ordered. Why? How are we ever going to get out if we trust elves like you? Asked Hattie. She hopped off and made Lillian follow. The elf looked back at Hattie with a look of hatred and fear in his eyes. I wouldn't want to rain on your parade, but you don't say that to people. Get on the spider unless you want to face a gruesome death. Was that a threat? Questioned Hattie. Before the elf could respond, Hattie saw an army of goblins behind them and hesitantly got on the spider, then helped pull Lillian up. She shielded her eyes from the pouring rain as the spider bolted through the forest. She didn't dare look back, but Lillian did. She saw an army of goblins chasing after them from behind. They were howling and snorting like pigs. It was odd for them to be in the daylight like this. They must have been specially threatened by the appearance of spiders, elves, and humans in their domain. As soon as they entered the light, they hissed and backed away, cursing in their horrible goblin language. They shook their fists in anger and threw their spears, barely missing. The spider ran up to a river, and that's where they stopped. The elf hitched the spider to a tall, skinny stump next to the river and let it drink and rest. He sat down and took off his armor, cloak, and boots, revealing a beige tunic over a necromancer's hood. Thank God we're done, because that was miserable. The last one, at least. I actually, really, really hate the first draft. And I can't believe I thought it was good. And the fact that I thought that the first draft was so good when I was writing it has got me afraid that the current draft is actually also really bad, and I'm just blind to it because I'm the one that wrote it. I know it's better than the first draft, but, I did think the first draft was good. Just saying. I guess in the first draft, I tried to sound like Tolkien. I was really bad at it because I was in, 6th grade. But now, in this draft, I'm still trying to sound like Tolkien. But, I also branch out and read other books as well. And so it's, not just trying to copy one author. It's, a good mix. And that's me. I don't know, like, if I even have a writing style. I kind of just, maybe I do, but like my writing style has changed so much over the years. In the first draft, I was trying, I remember, to make it sound like a series of unfortunate events, because I remember in like the summer of 5th grade, no, it was when COVID happened. It was like in the middle of 5th grade, and then I had so much to do, and I accidentally stole a series of unfortunate events from the school. And so I would like read it over and over again. And even before that, I was reading it. I think I stopped at like the 5th book. But I remember I liked it so much, and it would always like say things directly to the reader, like break the fourth wall. So I tried to do that a lot, and I would put things in parentheses and like say things that were off topic, but it didn't work for me at all, especially not now. Like, I would never, ever, ever do that. Ever. I try to not use parentheses like as often as I can, because I don't do anything that as reminiscent at all of my old writing style, because it's so bad. It's so bad. I can't. Like, I actually am embarrassed reading the first draft, and the second draft isn't like that good either, but I think that I'm doing a lot better right now, personally. Not to toot my own horn, but I do think that it is a lot higher quality than even the second draft, because I used to like write a lot at a time. I would write like 15 pages in one day, in one sitting. I would just sit in my room and write. So I'd miss a lot of mistakes, and it was most definitely quantity over quality the way I was writing it. But now I've been working on this since January 5th, 2025, like the third draft, and I only have 14 pages. Not saying that's a bad thing. I do wish I was going faster, but like I have chronic writer's block. I have writer's block all the time, and it makes it like impossible. I try to like, I don't know, I'm going on a whole rant, but like I have a lot to say about writing. I love writing. It's so much fun. And if I look back at this and the audio is messed up or anything along those lines, I'm going to smash my head in. Okay, that's it. Goodbye.